Writing is a vital symbol of human civilization, more important than any other invention in human history. It has transformed the world, enabling humans to communicate language and text more effectively. How did ancient people learn to write? What thoughts and information were recorded in early writing? In the cradle of human civilization, the languages and scripts used by people were as enigmatic as riddles. How have researchers cracked these mysteries after thousands of years of silence? From the dawn of human consciousness, people attempted to depict themselves and their environment using images and symbols. For instance, the historical records of writing in ancient Western Asia, Egypt, China, and India can be traced back 4,000 to 5,000 years. Language and writing set humans apart from animals, civilization from barbarism. The earliest of written script are preserved in the ancient lands of Western Asia. Let's explore one of the greatest discoveries in human history. The development of commerce and trade facilitated the evolution of early writing. Whenever the number of transactions exceeded what one person could easily remember, the inhabitants of the river valleys used clay tablets to keep records. Early humans inscribed the shapes of animals on damp clay tablets, which were then sun-dried. These were the earliest pictographs. Over time, people invented many standard pictures with abstract meanings. For example, a bowl represented food, and a human head with a bowl signified eating, forming a symbol. It was discovered that it was easier and quicker to carve a few stylized marks on clay tablets to symbolize objects than to depict real objects. Around 2500 BCE, people began to use reed styluses to inscribe symbols on clay tablets. The tip of the reed stylus left a thicker mark on the tablet than the body of the stylus, resembling a scorpion. This script is what we now call cuneiform. Cuneiform includes three basic signs: horizontal wedge, vertical wedge, and slanted wedge. The term cuneiform comes from the Latin word for wedge or scorpion. For 2 millennia, cuneiform was the common script of the ancient Western Asians. By the 14th century BCE, cuneiform written in Akkadian had become the common script in Western Asia and North Africa, even used by Egyptians, Hittites, Syrians, and ancient Persians. Although cuneiform was prevalent in ancient times, it did not survive to the present day. How do we understand the thoughts and emotions of our ancestors expressed through these scripts? In 1685, Italian explorer Pietro della Valle traveled through the river valleys and discovered bricks with strange symbols, sparking interest in ancient languages. He copied 5 cuneiform signs in a letter to a friend and explained the direction of the script. He was one of the earliest to attempt to decipher cuneiform. In 1761 and 1767, Danish mathematician and writer Carsten Niebuhr traveled to Western Asia twice, documenting its unique landscapes and ancient ruins. Because he dressed like a local, he was the only survivor of the 6-person group that set out from Denmark. His works deeply captivated Europeans and piqued their interest. As explorers and European nations, especially the British and French, made significant archaeological discoveries in Western Asia, attempts were made to decipher the text written on clay tablets, carved on stone stelae, and temple walls. When a civilization dies, it often leaves clues. The decipherment of writing is the key to reopening ancient civilizations. In the 19th century, a French soldier discovered 3 scripts on the Rosetta Stone, which became the basis for the later French scholar Jean-François Champollion's decipherment of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. The 3 scripts on the Behistun inscription in Persia also became the key to deciphering ancient Mesopotamian scripts. Grotefend was born in 1775, and his decipherment work began with a bet with a colleague. At that time, many top scholars in Europe tried to decipher several inscriptions found in Persepolis but failed. They declared it an unsolvable problem, which Grotefend took as a challenge to his intelligence. Grotefend, who studied philosophy rather than linguistics, relied mostly on logical reasoning and conjecture in his decipherment efforts. He first assumed that the inscriptions he had were about the kings of the Persian Empire, and he was right. This logical reasoning helped him decipher the text. In 1835, British officer Henry Rawlinson was appointed as the military advisor to the governor of Kermanshah in Persia. On his way to take up the post, he heard about the story of the Behistun inscription carved on a cliff outside Persepolis. Rawlinson's decipherment work began with copying the inscriptions himself. The Behistun inscription was entirely written in cuneiform. Later research revealed that this new type of inscription contained 3 ancient scripts. After 10 years of effort, The complete Behistun inscription was copied in 1847. Finally, in 1852, he published his decipherment results. He deciphered the inscription, which was about Darius, an ancient imperial ruler, and his people. By the mid-19th century, the decipherment of Babylonian cuneiform became more accurate. Cuneiform has three writing systems: logographic, syllabic, and alphabetical. Due to the differences in writing systems, there is a difference in the number of characters used. The logographic system uses the most characters, with over 1,200 symbols discovered so far, and the actual number of characters used may far exceed this figure. The syllabic system uses only over 600 symbols, while the alphabetical system of ancient Persia uses only 36 symbols. Although cuneiform was used to express various languages, none exceeded these three systems. Once all the texts were deciphered, people could examine the history of writing from the development of cuneiform. Before the decipherment of cuneiform, the French had already deciphered another ancient script, hieroglyphs, originating from Egypt. The search for the origins of writing can be said to have begun in Egypt. In the spring of 1798, at a meeting of the French Academy of Sciences, Napoleon, holding a book written in Arabic about Nepal and nearby regions, delivered a speech assigning tasks for scientific research in Egypt. A few days later, he led his troops on an expedition to Egypt. Although Napoleon's expedition to Egypt was a mistake, it sparked a craze for studying ancient civilizations across Europe and the world. In August 1799, a soldier in the French Expeditionary Force discovered a black sunstone stele in Rosetta, a place in the western Nile River Delta. The stele was inscribed with three types of script, known as the famous Rosetta Stone, which became the key to deciphering ancient languages. Among these three types of script, the bottom one was Greek letters, and the other two were unknown hieroglyphic symbols and demotic script symbols. After the Rosetta Stone was discovered, the text on the stele was printed and distributed to all interested scholars. One of the prints fell into the hands of Swedish diplomat Åkerblad. Proficient in several Eastern languages, he compared the three scripts on the stele and found that they were actually the same document. It was a decree issued by Ptolemy V in 196 BC, granting donations to temples. The young French scholar and linguistic genius Jean-François Champollion was the one who ultimately deciphered the Egyptian hieroglyphs. He had known the story of the Rosetta Stone since he was young and dedicated his life to deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphs, gradually unveiling the mysteries of Egyptian civilization. The ancient Egyptians believed that their script was created by the gods, the god of writing and wisdom. Thoth taught the ancient Egyptians the method of writing. The ancient Egyptians also believed that their language was a divine language, a gift from the gods to humans. The term hieroglyph in English is composed of the Greek words for god and carving. It is said that this was created by the ancient Greeks who saw hieroglyphs carved on the walls of temples in Egypt. Egyptian hieroglyphs evolved from pictographic writing, one of the oldest forms of writing. They first appeared 5,500 years ago, slightly later than in ancient Mesopotamia. The emergence of cuneiform was between 3,500 and 3,100 BC, with pictographic writing beginning to include ideographic and phonetic symbols. The most typical early hieroglyphic inscription is the Palermo stone from 3100 BC, unearthed in Upper Egypt. The most frequently used symbols numbered about 700, growing to 5,000 by the Roman era. According to Gardner's classification of hieroglyphs, there are 55 different symbols representing men and various professions, 7 symbols representing women, 54 symbols representing birds, and 51 symbols representing parts of buildings. Hieroglyphs were usually carved on stone stelae or the walls of temples and tombs, and sometimes appeared on papyrus. Later, their use became more limited to monumental inscriptions. Although hieroglyphs are one of the oldest forms of writing in human history, due to their limitations, they could not meet the increasingly complex needs of human social interaction and were gradually replaced by other forms of writing. During the 14th dynasty or slightly earlier, the Egyptians invented a faster clerical script. Around 700 BC, the Demotic script replaced the clerical script. The Demotic script was the common form of writing during the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. In the 3rd century, Coptic script emerged. After Christianity was introduced to Egypt, The Egyptians created the Coptic language by borrowing 24 letters from the Greek alphabet and adding 7 Demotic script characters as supplementary letters for the convenience of copying and translating the Bible. After the Arabs conquered Egypt, Coptic gradually gave way to Arabic, and the latest known hieroglyphic inscription is the 394D inscription known as the Memphite Theology. Today, most of the world's alphabetical scripts first appeared in the Western Asia region. Around 2000 BC, some scripts appeared in Byblos, Palestine, which were called pseudo-hieroglyphs because some characters resembled hieroglyphs. Pseudo-hieroglyphs had 80 symbols, which was a reduction compared to the hundreds of hieroglyphic symbols and cuneiform symbols. This pseudo-hieroglyphic script began to strive for fewer characters. Around 1500 BC, the Proto-Sinaitic script appeared on the Sinai Peninsula. By 1000 BC, the Phoenician alphabet was essentially formed. The Phoenician alphabet is considered the source of Western Greek and Roman alphabets. In the 7th century BC, this alphabet was passed on to the Romans, becoming the basis for the Latin alphabet. The Latin alphabet spread across Europe with the expansion of the Roman Empire and the spread of Christianity. With the Age of Discovery, the Latin alphabet also spread to the Americas and Oceania. The importance and influence of ancient scripts are still very significant today. Even now, the Chinese people still use logographic characters, which is the most widely used script in the world and the only one among the oldest scripts that has not become extinct. This is similar to the cuneiform of Western Asia and the hieroglyphs of Egypt. Initially, the Chinese used pictures to express ideas. In the 600-year-old Banpo site in Xi'an, there are remnants of human civilization, where pottery with patterns and symbols was found. Later, these pictures took on abstract meanings, and Chinese characters emerged. The origin of Chinese characters has a legend. In the Shuangjiezi, it is said that Shening tied knots to record daily affairs, and as time passed and affairs became more complicated, many misunderstandings arose. Later, Kangxi, the historian of the Yellow Emperor, created characters based on the traces left by animals. Of course, this is just a legend. The formation of Chinese characters had a very long process. In 221 BC, after Emperor Qin Shi Huang unified China, he standardized the Chinese characters. Xiaochuan became the official script, and in civilian life, clerical script gradually became the common script. The ancients summarized the methods of character creation as pictographic, ideographic, phonosemantic, associative compound, and loan characters. The principle of separating sound, form, and meaning in Chinese character creation is highly adaptable to languages with different pronunciations. People from different ethnicities and regions, despite having different accents, can still use the same script, which played a decisive role in the long-term stability of feudal dynasties and the inheritance of Chinese culture. With the spread of Chinese culture, the scripts of many countries and ethnic groups were influenced by Chinese characters. Ancient scripts such as the Western Xia, Khitan, and Jurchen scripts, as well as those of Japan, Korea, and Vietnam, all bear the imprint of Chinese characters. The role of writing materials in enlightening human civilization is immeasurable. Where there is access to cheap writing materials, the level of human civilization is relatively widespread. The history of early writing materials has evolved from being large, cumbersome to lightweight, portable, and inexpensive. In the ancient Western Asia region, clay was the cheapest writing material, and reeds for making pens were everywhere. Therefore, clay tablets were the most important writing material for a long time. However, in Asia Minor, the situation was different. In the Hittite kingdom ruins, the clay tablet documents found were all royal documents. Some believe that the Hittites introduced a new way of writing from the river valleys and used clay tablets and reed pens for writing cuneiform. Since these two materials were not common in Asia Minor and relied on imports, the cheap clay tablets and reed pens became scarce goods, valuable and patented by the royal family. Egypt had a rich variety of writing materials, and papyrus was a plant that could be found everywhere in the Nile River Delta. Processing and pressing it into sheets was simple, and papyrus was also very convenient for recording, carrying, and storing. The use of papyrus helped the ancient Egyptians build a civilization that lasted for centuries, and its influence is still very significant today. Through exchange, papyrus spread from Egypt to ancient Greece and Rome. The word paper in English today comes from the Greek word for papyrus. In ancient China, writing materials ranged from pottery to oracle bones, bamboo slips, silk, and metal and stone. Among China's significant inventions that influenced the world was the major change in writing materials, the invention of papermaking. There are many types of writing materials, and the direction and fonts of writing vary. Some are written from left to right, some from right to left, some from top to bottom, and some have no fixed direction. For early scholars, determining the direction of writing was a challenging problem in deciphering texts. However, hieroglyphs can provide clues. The direction can usually be determined by the orientation of hieroglyphic symbols representing people or animals. Today, most scripts use a left-to-right horizontal writing method, and various writing habits can only be seen in our calligraphic works. Currently, there are over 2,000 languages in the world, with 200 having more than 1 million speakers, 50 with more than 10 million, and the larger languages accounting for over 96% of the global population. The remaining less than 4% of the population speaks over 2,000 languages, which are constantly disappearing. The greatest contribution of writing to our world today is preservation. We can learn from history. Through these written materials, we can understand how ancient people thought, communicated with each other, what they believed in, what their hobbies were, and what their daily lives were like. These written materials allow us to understand the rise and fall of history, which has a significant impact on our development today and in the future. Although no one can exactly say how many languages have existed in the world, there are still many languages, like the ancient Indus script found in the Harappa culture site, that are buried in the dust of history, waiting for people to excavate and decipher.